I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. In this special episode, I'm going to be giving you my predictions for the 2020 Golden Globes in all categories on the film side. But if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is break down a different category for the Oscars, predicting what I think will get nominated, and eventually, once the nominations come out, what I think will win. But more generally, this is still an awards season, an awards watch kind of a channel where I give my predictions and thoughts on everything award season 4, Oscars, Golden Globes, SAGs. So I gave my predictions of the nominations and including my reactions, and you guys have shown a lot of support for that, so please do keep that up. But in this video, let's just jump into my thoughts and my predictions on what will win the 2020 Golden Globes. So starting off in the first category, Best Film Drama, my prediction is going to be Trial of the Chicago 7. Now, it's a movie that I think has got a lot going for it and sort of checks off a lot of things. Now, it's also important to remember that if I predict this to win for the Best Film Drama, that's not to say it's going to win the Oscars, that the Golden Globes are a very select group of people, where the Academy's thousands of members, the Golden Globes is less than 100. So we have to understand how the Hollywood Foreign Press Association votes and how they're different than something like the Academy. And I think Trial of the Chicago 7 is really up their alley. We know that the demographic of the group skews older, skews also more white and liberal. Those are some generic factors that we can factor in. So when thinking about that and you're looking at past year's winners, I think Trial of the Chicago 7 fits in pretty well. First of all, it's a crowd pleaser. A lot of the past winners, whether it be something like Green Book or even something Bohemian Rhapsody or 1917 last year, they have been these sort of triumphant or celebratory movies that at the end of the day, even if it was a difficult kind of a movie, you still feel good coming out of it. And I think that's the situation with Trial of Chicago 7, that they sort of have a triumphant end conclusion, which sort of makes you feel good when you come out of the movie. Second, it has acting support. Now, aside from last year in 1917, for most of the winners in this category, but also in film, comedy, musical, most of the time the winners have acting support along with them. So you think of something like Green Book and Mahershala Ali, or the La La Land sweep, where it got both Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. So that's something that you have to factor in, that when you're thinking about your winners, if you're predicting Nomadland, do you really think Frances McDormand will win, or do you think it'll be sort of a 1917 scenario? It's hard to judge it in that sense, but I do think that generally throughout the history of the Golden Globes, most of the time there's an acting win paired with the winner. So for Trial of Chicago 7, funnily enough though, it could win for Best Supporting Actor, but it could not win at all. But I do think it's going to win for Sacha Baron Cohen for Borat. So in a way, it's kind of like a second step removed from getting an acting support win. So this may be a year where maybe you go with Promising Young Woman because of Carey Mulligan, but ultimately I went with Trial of Chicago 7 because it has acting support, in that it got in for Best SAG Ensemble. So we know more generally, and Critics' Choice, we know more generally the movie is well liked. Sacha Baron Cohen very well could win for Best Supporting Actor, but I think if he was not nominated for Borat, I think he would have won Best Supporting Actor. But because he's nominated for Borat, I think they'll sort of show the support in that category instead. So I think overall Trial of Chicago 7 has that sort of triumphant, crowd-pleasing factor. It was very well nominated, has the acting support at the very least in the nomination of Sacha Baron Cohen for this movie. And in a political year with a new president and the Black Lives Matter movement, I think the Hollywood Foreign Press Association wanted to make a statement based on that. And I think Trial of Chicago 7 is probably the most direct link out of all the nominees that came out in the Golden Globes. Then jumping over to Best Film Drama Actress, I went with Carey Mulligan for Promising Young Woman. This was a category that was sort of up in the air for a long time because the two front runners were sort of Viola Davis or Frances McDormand, but they had won so recently, and it was sort of who would be the spoiler, who would be that? And I think after Promising Young Woman's surprise, in many ways success, getting in for Best Director for Emerald Fennell and Screenplay and Best Film Drama, it shows that they really like this movie. And I very well could see a scenario where it wins in Best Film Drama. But right now I think the support will go to Carey Mulligan for Best Film Drama Actress. Like I said, Viola Davis and Frances McDormand, while they're liked and their movies are well liked, I think that they were sort of received the award, the Golden Globe, so recently. With Viola's case 4 years ago, and with Frances 3 years ago, and then you look at some of the other nominees, you go, okay, Vanessa Kirby, well, Pieces of a Woman disappointed in the sense that it didn't get in for Ellen Burstyn. So that movie has sort of been disappointing and really has only gotten Vanessa throughout the course of the board. So I don't really think she'll surprise and get in. And then Andrew Day could very well be a spoiler, but Billie Holiday only had her, similarly to something like Vanessa Kirby for Pieces of a Woman. Now it also got in for song, and it does fit the sort of mold of a Golden Globe winner in the sense of she's playing a singer, and she's very sort of dramatic and has to go through a lot, and it's a big sort of showy performance. But I'm just not sure if enough people have seen Billie Holiday or if they like Billie Holiday enough to win it. And ultimately, for most of these acting categories, I have gone with the most performance. That I've done well in previous years by predicting the winner by in terms of who does the most, who's the most showy, because I think that this group really likes that sort of performance. And I think Carey Mulligan is the answer this year. That some of the other performers are a little bit more subtle, where Carey Mulligan is really on this sort of rage-fueled female revenge story, and she plays many different facets. You know, sometimes she plays drunk, she has to sort of fall in love, and there's a romantic element to it. She has to be incredibly cold and calculating and icy. So she's going through these different modes as she's trying to sort of allure and prey on the sort of males who try to take advantage of her in her acting states. But so Carey Mulligan is definitely doing a lot in the movie, in the sense that she's playing all these almost many roles within this larger role. So with the sort of type of role that she has and the strength of the film, I'm actually pretty confident that Carey Mulligan wins this award, and I'd be surprised if she didn't. And this could very much be the coronation for eventually winning the Oscar, which I think she can also do for this movie. Then Best Film Drama Actor, I went with Chadwick Boseman for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Now, the Golden Globes are, as always, sort of the first awards group to go, so we don't really have a lot of indicators, particularly in this year when many of the guilds have been sort of delaying their nominations process. So where it's hard to say what is sort of the front runner. So in many ways, I think the Globes will be able to tell us who it is this year. And I think for Chadwick, it's either his year or it's not his year. Of course, he passed away, unfortunately, earlier in the year. And you may say that, okay, that's a guarantee for a win. But that's not necessarily true. Not every sort of posthumous performance has won in the sense, but it does have a very good track record in the sense that if your movie is well-liked and your performance that is well-liked and you die, unfortunately, in the case of someone like Peter Finch for Network or even someone like Heath Ledger for Joker, I think that, or in The Dark Knight, I think that almost always they sort of get rewarded. So I don't want to overthink this and go with, Anthony Hopkins, maybe for The Father, because Ma Rainey was a well-liked movie. Got in for both lead and, of course, Viola Davis for lead actress. Chadwick has an explosive performance. I think that his performance very much indicates his passing in many ways, and that you could read that into it because his character is all about sort of sacrificing and doing now, and there's not enough time left, and I want to be my own person. And he really is giving a lot. Long speeches, long monologues. He goes through a range of emotions from joking around to crying to being incredibly angry to being upset to being sort of sexual. I mean, there's really a range of performances within the movie, and I think in many ways it is his movie, despite being called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So, in my opinion, not only is the posthumous factor in and give him a big boost, this is the literal last chance that you'll get to nominate this incredibly young actor who passed away too soon, but also it factors into the bigness. I think this is also the biggest performance of the year. There's a lot that he's doing. He's doing a lot of speeches. I think it will sort of resonate to the members of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, and I think right now it's a situation where if he does win, lock it in, Chadwick is going to win for Best Lead Actor at the Oscars, but if he doesn't, and maybe it goes to Anthony Hopkins for The Father, he may be a little bit more vulnerable than we think. Then for Best Supporting Actor, I went with Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah. And this is a category I think is probably the most open of the night. The comedies are hard to judge, but I think this one is really a three-way tie between Sacha Baron Cohen for Trial of Chicago 7 and Leslie Odom Jr. for One Night in Miami, and then of course Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah. I'll tell you why I didn't go with the other two first and sort of lean why I went ultimately with Daniel Kaluuya. First, Sacha Baron Cohen. I think he's going to get in for Best Comedy Actor for Borat. The last time we saw a dual win for two performances in two different categories at the Golden Globes was Kate Winslet for The Reader. So it's not like it doesn't happen. We've seen it happen before. That being said, I still don't expect it to happen. It could happen if they really like Trial of Chicago 7. But right now, I think they'll sort of split their vote and go with the easier choice and just, okay, we'll give it to Sacha for comedy because that category is a little easier to go with. Then something like One Night in Miami, it did get in for someone like Regina King for director, but did not get in for Best Drama, so that may hurt him. It's also true that if they reward Speak Now for One Night in Miami, the Best Original Song category, they will give a Golden Globe to Leslie Odom Jr. So that's a factor that maybe we have to consider as well. And then ultimately, I went with Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah. Despite being sort of the sole nominee for his movie, it also got in for Best Song, but no drama, no director, things like that. I think it's a movie that sort of coming out late, that people are just seeing it recently on HBO Max. And I think a lot of people are wowed by it. It has a high critical response, and if we're talking about the most, Jalen Kaluuya is definitely the most. He fits a lot of the categories that we've seen before. First of all, he's playing a real-life person in Fred Hampton, an iconic person in that, and that's helped someone like Bohemian Rhapsody, Rami Malek for playing Freddie Mercury, or even someone like Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour. We've seen these performances where they're playing these real-life iconic people get rewarded many times before. Daniel Kaluuya is also very much in the movie. I would consider him a co-lead, but he's still campaigning and supporting actor. And we know in these supporting categories, the more you're in the movie, the more you feel like a lead, the more people remember the movie and think of you. It always helps their chances. For someone like Mahershala Ali for Green Book. And the Globes more generally like the sort of entertaining and populist more movies, that even though it's sort of a socially backed movie, in many ways it's sort of like a cat and mouse crime movie and an entertaining one in that. And I think a lot of the Globes members will be appealed to that. And I think for a lot of people, the standout is Daniel Kaluuya, because he has these large speeches, because he's more shy and romantic in some other moments, and he really is the Black Panther Party at the time, and the leader and the figurehead and the face of the movie when we think of it. So it's an explosive performance, it's a bold performance, and I think enough people will have seen it with this sort of recency bias, late-breaking factor. I think Daniel Kaluuya and his big speechified performance, playing a real-life person, has so many factors of previous winners that he should win in here, and I expect him to get in, or I predict him to, at least. Then Best Supporting Actress. This is my sort of dark horse pick, my off-the-wall pick. I went with Glenn Close from Hillbilly Elegy. I think ever since Amanda Seyfried missed out on the Screen Actors Guild Award nomination, this category has really been up in the air. I think this gives a strong case for Glenn Close. Like I talked about with Daniel Kaluuya, Glenn is also playing a real-life person. Not an iconic one, someone like Fred Hampton, but someone who is the grandmother of J.D. Vance, the author of Hillbilly Elegy, and who the film sort of stars. And it's not a particularly strong category this year, so we have to look at sort of external factors that we know this group likes and sort of the narratives that builds. And I think Glenn has the strongest. First of all, she is well liked. She has won multiple Golden Globes before, and I do like her, and as well as being well nominated. And it was just a couple of years ago that we thought The Wife, okay, it's going to be The Wife's year. Glenn Close for The Wife is going to win, and she's finally going to get her Oscar. And the Globes did it, and SAG did it, and then the Oscars kind of pivoted and went with Olivia Colman. So that's a factor as well, that we still haven't given Glenn her Oscar, and this may be the announcement of, you know what, actually this is the movie that Glenn's going to get her Oscar for, and we're going to announce it with Hillbilly Elegy. It's also, if we're going for the most once again, it definitely is the most performance by far. I think Olivia Colman in The Father is good, but it's very much the supporting role, and in the quieter, more simpler, kind of a subtler performance. And even someone like Amanda Seyfried for Mank, she is very much supporting, and I think when we think of the movie, we think of Gary Oldman with Mank, but with Hillbilly Elegy, I think Glenn Close is probably the first thing I personally think of. It's J.D. Vance, which is great, but it's really Amy Adams and Glenn Close's movie, but Glenn is supporting here. She does sort of have this transformative performance, and since she has these really long dresses and the wig, and it very much looks like the real life person, and has this sort of no bullshit kind of an attitude. So with a lack of real contenders, you know, you could say, okay, Olivia Colman's going to win because they really like her. Okay, that's maybe it. Or you could go Amanda Seyfried because she's the supposed front runner, but we don't have a lot of proof to necessarily even entail that, or maybe they want to reward Mank. There are some cases for some of the other members, but I actually think Glenn has the strongest case because she's never won an Oscar before, because this is a weaker year, that maybe, okay, this is her chance to give it to her and not really offend anybody else. Hillbilly Elegy, I think, is a sort of a strong emotional movie, and an emotional movie that I think has resonated with Academy members, but also Hollywood Foreign Press Association. And I think Glenn is a strong reason as to why you feel that. It's a part transformative performance. She's playing a real life person. There's a lot of things going for Glenn, and I think that we may sort of go through it again and go like, you know, actually now this is Glenn's year to win for an Oscar, and I think it starts here for the Golden Globes. So I went on a limb, and I think because this category is so up in the air, let's actually try maybe Glenn gets it this year. Then Best Director, I went with Chloe Zhao for Nomadland, and she's a sort of obvious front runner, and I don't think that will change. Now, first of all, I think the movie is well like Nomadland. I could very well see it winning Best Film Drama and Chloe Zhao for Best Director, and see it sort of do a 1917 path, although that's an unlikely path as seen by previous years, that most of the time we see an acting win or a screenplay or whatnot, so that's important to note. But I do think Chloe still gets in for director. First of all, her style is evident between this and The Rider. We see sort of this sort of Malick-esque natural lighting, realistic kind of approach to storytelling that succeeded both in The Rider and Nomadland and is visually distinct. I also don't think she has a strong competition. You could say something like David Fincher for Mank, but he's already won a Golden Globe before, and I don't think that movie's going to win Best Film Drama, so there may be a Martin Scorsese-Hugo situation where they just respect him so much that will nominate him. But Chloe Zhao just has too much going for her. The strength of the movie, the fact that it's visually stylistic, the fact that in a way it's a coronation for her because we know where her next project is. It's a big-time Marvel MCU movie that she's sort of leading as sort of the next step within the universe. So we know that she's going to be she's going to be around in Hollywood, that she's not just a one and done. And in a year where they've nominated 3 female directors, I think that they'll want to reward one of them, and maybe a sign of negativity if David Fincher, say, wins and they go, they've nominated 3 female directors and didn't give them to any of them. I think that would look bad, and then the Hollywood Foreign Press Association knows that, so they'll want to give it to Chloe Zhao. Then Best Film Comedy Musical. This is one of the strangest categories we've seen in many years, because this category almost always has an Oscar contender, whether it be an Oscar like strong contender in someone like La La Land, or a lesser contender in something like The Martian or Lady Bird. They're still contenders. They're still movies that get in for Best Director or get in for Best Picture, and they're sort of the only one in their category, so oftentimes they do win. Yet this year, we don't really have that. So it's like trying to decide between Borat 2 and Hamilton. Well, Hamilton's not going to qualify for the Oscars, so where do you go? Borat's a comedy movie. They very rarely award comedies. That being said, I still went with my pick of being Borat's subsequent movie film. I expected to win also Best Lead Actress in a Comedy or Musical and Best Lead Actor in a Comedy or Musical. It's a movie that was well nominated, got those 3 nominations in these big categories, and it very well could win all 3. I'm looking at an example like Hangover, back all the way in 2009, when that won for Best Comedy or Musical, which was like the last time there wasn't really a contender, and it sort of went to the more populist comedy movie that was the hit of the year. Hamilton seems to be maybe the prestigiest of them, but I'm not sure if the Globes are so interested in, they like to reward it and nominate it because they could nominate it, but ultimately I think they still approach their award giving as a sign of, okay, we're going to announce who the winners are going to be for the Oscar season coming forward. And I think out of all the movies that could have some Oscar buzz, it would be Borat's subsequent movie film. We know that Maria Bakalova very well could get in for Best Supporting Actor. We know that it could get in even for Best Adapted Screenplay, which will be fascinating. So right now, the most Oscar-y movie, funnily enough, is Borat. It's more populist. It was most well nominated out of all the choices, except for something like music, but that got a lot of backlash when that was so well nominated. So I think Borat's sort of an odd choice, but frankly the obvious choice. Then in Best Film Comedy Musical Actress, I have Maria Bakalova for Borat's subsequent movie film. Like I mentioned, she has sort of secured her spot in Best Supporting Actress category for the Oscars, yet is campaigning here for Best Lead Actress. We've seen this happen before, where actors sort of that are the most Oscar or have the Oscar chances often do get nominated here and win here. Something like Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird comes to mind, and I think that she's sort of the new hot comedy star for many ways, that they see her as going toe-to-toe with Sacha Baron Cohen and holding her own. She's a memorable part of the movie for a lot of people, and I think the funniest part of the movie for a lot of people. And while it's still traditionally not Golden Globes or award season kind of a movie, we'd have to look at the data and look what we have. And the fact is, Maria Bakalova has been sort of doing very well in Critics' Choices situations, been getting in these industry awards. So I expect her also to win in the Golden Globes for this category, and pretty handily, because all out of her other nominations, someone like Michelle Pfeiffer and whatnot, only Kate Hudson in music has her movie nominated for Best Film Comedy Musical. So she's really the only actress in this category whose film is also well liked. So it's pretty easy, and I think Maria Bakalova should easily win this category. And then Best Film Comedy Musical Actor, I mentioned it, I went with Sacha Baron Cohen. In a way, I look at it separately from the Comedy Musical Actress. The Comedy Musical Actress, there is no other actresses aside from Kate Hudson whose film is nominated for Best Film Comedy. So in a way, there is no competition. They don't like those movies as much, so they'll go with Maria Bakalova. In the same way, I look at it the opposite end for Sacha Baron Cohen in his category, that all of the other nominees, except for Dev Patel, have their movie nominated for Best Film Comedy. So Andy Samberg, Palm Springs, Lin-Manuel Miranda for Hamilton. So in a way I go, well, there's not anyone really sort of standing out in that sense. It's not like there's a huge campaign for James Corden. Lin-Manuel Miranda hasn't really been campaigning because this is the only place where it could really qualify. Andy Samberg for Palm Springs, but Palm Springs was a little bit disappointing, not getting in for Kristen Milioti. So you look at it and there's no real clear winner. So I think that they may go 2 wins. They may give it to Sacha for supporting and then Sacha here, or they may give it to Sacha supporting and give it to Dev Patel here. But really I think that the chances are when they're looking at their ballot to go, I can't decide, am I supporting? Okay, well, Sacha is so obviously going to win here. I'll give Sacha here the win and then give someone else in supporting and sort of split the vote that way and be a little bit more strategic with it, which we do see them do from time to time. So I don't want to overthink this. He, of course, is dual nominated, so that always helps in terms of getting a win too. So there's so many factors going for Sacha, and there's no real strong case really for anybody else, aside from sort of conjecture kind of stuff, that Sacha seems to be the clear pick and the obvious pick and the chalk pick, but I still went with it. Then for my best film screenplay winner, I went with The Trial of the Chicago 7, which makes sense with how I laid out my predictions. I always recommend going and looking at predictions and making sure that they make sense. You know, I thought about maybe doing Promising Young Woman in this category, but I've also thought if I think Trial of the Chicago 7 is going to win for best drama and then not win for anything else, well, that's going to be kind of weird. So you have to think about it, that if you go, say, Promising Young Woman in this category, don't go with Trial of the Chicago 7 for picture unless you think maybe Aaron Sorkin's going to win best director. That most of the time the winner of that best film drama category has multiple winners within that. So I didn't go with Promising Young Woman, but I also believe in Trial of the Chicago 7 because it makes sense, because I think it's going to be well liked within the Academy, and I think it's going to win for Best Film Drama, so it should pick up something, and this is the most obvious chance of it to pick up. That I think it's really between this and maybe Promising Young Woman, but Trial of Chicago 7 does fit a lot of the traditional elements of a screenplay winner. First of all, it's written by Aaron Sorkin, someone who they really like, and that's a testament to 2 previous wins for the Golden Globes for The Social Network, but also for Steve Jobs, which was a surprise nomination and a really surprise win for that movie, the operatic Steve Jobs. And then, if you remember a couple of years ago with Molly's Game, it was a surprise that it got nominated at the Golden Globes. It really shouldn't have. It should have gone to a more, prestigious movie that probably would have won Best Picture or something, but it wasn't. That ultimately they went with the Sorkin script because they really love Aaron Sorkin. So in this case, it feels perfect. First of all, they love Aaron Sorkin. Second of all, it was very well nominated. It's an Oscar movie. There's a chance for them to sort of reward him, even if they may not give it to him for director or for picture. They may be unsure if there's going to be a split. So hey, I really like this movie. I really want to reward it. This seems to be sort of the guaranteed slot in which it will win. It has a Sorkin-esque kind of jabs and monologues that the actors so wonderfully play with. There's also, we know that this group is sort of liberal leaning and older, so they may remember this event and have this sort of appreciation of what went down during the Democratic National Convention in this trial. So they'll sort of relate to it both emotionally, but also with some of the clever dialogue moments that Sorkin's able to bring. So it fits the traditional mold of this winner, but also it makes sense within my predictions and makes sense that if I predict it to win Best Film Drama, well, I also think it's going to get it for Best Screenplay. Best Animated Feature, I went with Soul. Sometimes we see some weird winners in this category. Something like Missing Link from last year comes to mind. But we know that movie was that award, and that movie essentially bought their award by campaigning very heavily to get that. But that being said, that very rarely happens. That when there isn't a sort of movie that's really campaigning hard, they go for the obvious pick. And in this case, I think the obvious pick is the mature, well-reviewed, critically acclaimed, intellectual but emotional Pixar movie of the year, that being Soul. They gave it to Inside Out, they gave it to Up in past years, Pete Docter's previous films. So I think they'll go with the sort of obvious pick, but the pick that will probably resonate with the most amount of people in Soul. So I wouldn't overthink this one. I don't really see Wolfwalkers or Over the Moon doing the heavy campaigning and to ultimately come over the edge and get it. It seems to be sort of the mature, respected pick, but still the populist pick in Soul. Best Foreign Language Film, I went with Minari, but this isn't a category that I think is as locked up as some people think. Some people, it's very obvious. You go, Minari, it should win because it's the most Oscar-y and should get it for Best Picture at the Oscars, so it should win in here, but that's not necessarily true. Because Another Round, we also know is very well liked, and there's not a guarantee that they'll go with that. But that being said, Minari still ultimately has a lot of things going for it. First of all, it's being campaigned by A24, the and this is really their only movie of the year that they're really going hard for. They have First Cow and On the Rocks, but those probably won't get nominated at the Oscars. But Minari could win Best Picture. It could get in for Director. I mean, it has a chance to get in there. So they really need a campaign to make sure that wins for Best Foreign Language Film here. And in past years, where movies like Oscar contenders like Roma and Parasite, which weren't eligible for Best Film Drama, but got in for Best Foreign Film, those movies still won. There wasn't a big sort of shock upset. They still won those categories. So I expect Minari, because it's the most Oscar, because it has the strongest people behind it, both in A24 and D.D. Carter, the producer, who has been won twice, I believe, and has been nominated many times. I expect them to sort of reward Minari in the sort of, once again, an obvious pick, but probably the correct pick. Best score, I went with Soul, but it's hard to say right now what it's going to go with. So I sort of tried to analyze it and break it down. And the reason I went with Soul is because, one, this is done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who were also nominated for Mank, for the score for Mank, which also got nominated this year. So when this usually happens, there's dual nominations for the same people within a category. Oftentimes they win. They don't usually cancel each other out. There's usually one movie that sort of comes through and gets them the win. This year, it seems like it's Soul, because Soul has been winning a lot of the Critics' Choice Awards instead of something like Mank. So it seems like of the score, Soul's the more well-liked. So Soul will be the one that would win if it were to win. And then I look at some of the other movies. It's like Alexandre Desplat, who's always a contender, but his movie isn't very well liked within the Globes because it wasn't well nominated. I believe this was his only nomination. Same thing with Tenet, and something like News of the World for James Newton Howard is a sort of more traditional score, but James Newton Howard has been well nominated, but yet has never won a Golden Globe and has never won an Oscar before. So most likely, I also think that the idea of what's the most obvious, now this is personal preference, but I think Soul has the most obvious kind of a score. It has an obvious theme, it's memorable, the movie is about music, so you're always thinking about the music when you think of this. So you think of music, you think of score, Soul's nominated, you check it off because that's the first thing that comes to mind. And then the final category, Best Song, I went with Speak Now from One Night in Miami. Now, once again, this is a category that we don't know too much about, but I'll tell you why I went with Speak Now instead of something else. Most of the time, if you look at all these nominees, they're all fight the injustice, fight the system, kind of triumphant, slow, powerful ballads. There isn't usually a poppy song. Sometimes the poppy song does win, like something like The Greatest Showman, but this year we don't have that, so it's trying to decide which is the best fight the injustice system kind of a movie. So when you look at them and you go, One Night in Miami is the most well-liked out of all these movies. It didn't get in for Best Film Drama, but it did get in for Leslie Odom Jr. and got in for Best Director for Regina King. So we know they like this the most out of all the nominees, which usually helps in cases like A Star is Born or La La Land. And the additional factor is that it's sung by an actor who was nominated. That oftentimes, if an actor gets nominated and their song also gets nominated, they win. So in this case, Speak Now, sung by Leslie Odom Jr., it's a way to reward him in sort of a meaningless kind of a category where they like him a lot in the movie because they liked him by nominating him in the supporting actor category, but now they could also still give them a Golden Globe just for a different category. The surprise could be Andra Day for United States v. Billie Holiday, because it has the same factor that Andra Day also was sung the song Tigress and Tweed. But that being said, United States v. Billie Holiday wasn't a well-received movie, both critically but also within the Globes, wasn't well nominated. So One Night in Miami, for those two factors, it's sung by one of the actors who's been nominated, and it's the most well-liked of the nominees. I expect Speak Now to also easily win this category. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please comment below. Let me know your thoughts and your predictions for the 2020 Golden Globes. I'd love to hear them. Maybe even TV. That would be fun too. And do you have a dark horse surprise like my Glenn Close for Hillbilly Elegy, or even maybe Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video, so you can see these sort of off-ball videos as well. That always appreciates the channel. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.